Hello, and have you ever wondered how the Wildfire Virus works in the Walking Dead franchise? Well, if you have, you have come to the right video, because in this video I'm going to explain the Wildfire Virus, its origins, and ways of prevention that have been found in the Walking Dead franchise. So with so much to talk about, let's jump right into this with what is the Wildfire Virus. And to put it simple, the Wildfire Virus is not one but two different strains. The first strain is the one that brings people back from the dead. This strain is dormant within every single human on the planet, and this means that this strand of the Wildfire Virus is airborne, waterborne, or both. And all this strand does is sit inside the host's body, which is humans, and then resurrects them when they die. Also, just to mention, resurrection time always takes place in less than 12 hours, but if you're a smaller person, it takes place quicker than a larger person. So if someone is really small and they're only about 50 kilograms, they might take an hour or two to come back. But if you're about maybe 120 kilograms and you're a very tall or big person, you're going to take maybe closer to 10 hours to come back. It really does depend on the size of the person, on how long it takes for them to become a walker. That is all this dormant version of the Wildfire Virus does. No matter how you die, the host, which is humans, would be resurrected and become a walker. But once they are a walker, that's when the second strain comes in, and it is an active version of the Wildfire Virus. And this acts different to the dormant version. So the active Wildfire Virus, when a human is bit by a walker, the virus is then injected into their body, and it acts like meningitis. It will go straight to the brain and kill the host, and that's all it does. The active version of the Wildfire Virus does not bring you back. The dormant one that already lives inside the host brings you back. That is why animals can become infected by the Wildfire Virus but cannot turn, because they cannot carry the dormant version of the Wildfire Virus, which brings you back. And if you want any more information on animals and why they can't become walkers, go click on the icon on the top right, or at the end of the video, go click on the link, and you'll be taken to my Animals Wildfire Virus Explained video. And now we know how the basics of the Wildfire Virus works, let's talk about walkers and how the Wildfire Virus affects the infected. And the first thing is that the Wildfire Virus brings back the bare minimum of the human. And by that I mean they bring back the brainstem and minimal body functions are working. That's how the corpse gets up and around. The part that makes you, as explained in season 1 episode 6, is gone. It is just the brainstem and basic motor functions. That is all that is left of you after you turn. Your body is just up and about, and that is it. All the organs don't seem to be working, because it's clear that walkers can live without even their bodies. As long as the brainstem is still around, a walker will still remain active. That's the only bit that ever comes back when someone becomes a walker. The Wildfire Virus also slows down the decay rate quite extensively, as seen in The Walking Dead and the whole franchise. They are now 10, even Dead City, 18, 19 years in, and walkers are still around. They might now just be skeletons with pieces of meat on them, but the brainstem seems to not decay, so that keeps the walkers up and around, even though their bodies are literally falling apart. And another notable thing about walkers is that they are blind. Because the brainstem is only brought back, the rest of the brain isn't. So that means that the eyes don't function. That's why walkers can't see people when they are quiet or when they're using the guts trick. Walkers get around through sound and through smell alone. And that is why survivors have adopted ways of surviving, like using the guts trick, as I mentioned, or using something called pets. This is when someone makes a walker docile. So you cut off their arms, you cut out their jaws, because they can't infect you. Walkers then kind of forget you're there and they just do whatever you want. And if you walk into a herd with two pets, the herd can't see you, because those walkers are docile next to you. They, as long as you're quiet, they ignore you, thinking that you're also one of the pets. And that's how blindness really does aid our survivors in the apocalypse. Another thing to mention, a quick note, if you smell really bad, like from an infection, like Morgan did in Fear season 6 episode 1, because he had a really infected wound, if you have like gangrene or your flesh is actually rotting, walkers will ignore you. They think you're one of their own. And the final thing I need to talk about while we're mentioning the walkers and this part of the Wildfire Virus is that the Wildfire Virus has a chance when someone comes back as a walker to create a variant walker. Most people, when they come back as a walker, they are slow, shambling, and their bodies are just going around endlessly. However, there's a chance, we don't know how this happens yet, but there's a chance when someone comes back, they come back as a smart walker or a climber as they are called, and these are walkers that are smart enough to climb, open doors, and use tools. We have seen this in The Walking Dead Season 1, Season 2, and Season 11, and these walkers have been seen to be way more perceptive than the normal walker. These walkers are able to hear further or be more aware of their surroundings, as seen in episode 19 of Season 11, Variant, where the variant walker was able to sense Aaron, Jerry, Elijah, and Lydia when the rest of the herd was unaware of their presence. However, they seem to be quite rare and seen by most survivors as a rumour and not an actual threat. I do also want to quickly mention, this is the only natural variation of a walker in the Walking Dead franchise. Every other variation we have seen in Variant has been either made by the environment or made man-made. There might be one other natural variant, which is the run at the end of the World Beyond post-credit scene. However, that cohort is what it was called, is a one-time thing. We've never seen that one specific type of variant ever again, and it seems to be retconned or quietly forgotten about. So we only have one natural variant, and that is the smart walkers or climbers as they're known, and the normal walkers. And now let's move on to the origin of the Wildfire Virus. And we don't have any hard evidence, but we can speculate with a lot of the information that we have found throughout these 15 years with the Walking Dead franchise. One quick mention, it could be space spores. This is an idea that has been floated around by the creator Robert Kirkman for years, and it's kind of been slightly confirmed for it to be the reason why it happens in the comics. And it's been mentioned in World Beyond Season 1 with a soldier mention it came from space. However, this is just a fun idea and an Easter egg that Robert Kirkman keeps messing around because he doesn't want the exact origin to be revealed. However though, as time's gone on, we have got more and more information about the origin of the virus, and it has now been widely agreed by the fan base that the origin of the virus came from scientists and a research lab in France. So it all started in France, and apparently France made it worse. So this all comes from the World Beyond post-credit scene with the scientist and the survivor, where the survivor mentioned that it was started here and they made it worse, mentioning the man-made variants like the ampers, like the burners, and it seems that French scientists were the cause, or they did something that let the wildfire virus break out across the entire world. So that is the origin. It could change because it has only been hinted at and it's just been agreed upon by the fan base. We haven't got AMC being like, this is the straight how it started, but it has been widely agreed on that French scientists started the outbreak and then made it so much worse in France by creating variants and continue to create variants in France, and that's why France has so many variant walkers, whereas the rest of the world only really have walkers and climbers / smart walkers. And now let's finally move on to prevention. So how do our survivors prevent becoming a walker in the Walking Dead franchise? Well, the simple thing is when someone dies, destroy the brainstem. Once the brainstem's gone, they can't come back. If not, they come back as a walker. However, what if a survivor is bit? How do they prevent dying and becoming a walker? Well, the most common way of prevention in the Walking Dead franchise is amputation. If it is on the lower arm or lower leg, the survivor can amputate that limb if done very soon after the bite. If they take too long, even with amputation, it will not work and they will still die. There is another risk though. You might cut off your leg and survive the bite, but then you might die from the blood loss. However, this is not the only form of prevention in the Walking Dead franchise. This is the most common and the safest, but this does not protect you from bites on the torso or the neck. If you can't amputate, you're dead. The other way of prevention is shown in Fear the Walking Dead's final season, Season 8, Part 1, with radiation. If someone is bit and they can amputate, like being bit on the torso, if they're exposed to enough radiation, it will remove the virus. The virus will be killed off and the host will survive the bite. However, if you give too much radiation, they still have the bite, but then they get radiation sickness and die. But if you don't give enough, all it does is delay your death by about a week. You lose your symptoms and the virus goes dormant for about a week before reactivating and killing off the host again. So this prevention is not as good as amputation. However, it can give you more time if you've been bit and you cannot amputate. Characters which have gone through this form of prevention are characters like Dwight and Sherry's son Finch, who is bit on the torso and was able to survive another week after treatment before succumbing to the virus. The only character that might have survived the radiation process, air quotes, would have been Alicia from Fear the Walking Dead. However, it is unclear if it was the radiation which kept her going, or is it because she amputated her arm as well, and maybe it's a mix of the radiation plus the amputation which was able to make her survive her bite. And sadly, that is everything we have on radiotherapy and how it works with prevention, because it was picked up and dropped very quickly in Fear the Walking Dead. We could have been so close to a cure, and that is prevention. There's only two ways to do it. You either amputate, which works almost every time, or you risk it with radiotherapy, and that is this video. And hopefully you now know everything you need to know about the wildfire virus. You know how it works, how walkers are made, and how to not become a walker. Please tell me down below if I missed anything crucial about this. But this is me today, so thank you for watching. If you want to find out about the animals and have that explained properly, look on the screen. It should be somewhere on the screen with my animals and them explaining how they don't become walkers.